Right, let's start with the puja. Okay. So if you want, you can just sit calmly, put your palms together. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami, dhammang saranang gacchami, sanghang saranang gacchami, dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami, dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami, dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami, tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami, tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami, tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Anatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Adinadana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Kamesu miccācara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Musavada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Surameraya majjapama dattana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Spend a short while doing a bit of breath meditation. So find a comfortable position, either sitting cross-legged on the floor or on the chair. The most important thing is comfort and balance. Here I will give you the instructions. I'll be doing a bit of talking by way of instructions so that you know what to do. Then practice on your own. As long as you can, even if it is short, it's all right. There's no such thing as a bad meditation. When you sit in meditation, you face your own mind and you start befriending your mind, learning about your mind. It starts with the breath. So just breathe in a relaxed, normal way. In fact, don't do anything to your breath. Just let it be. All that we are doing is we are directing all our attention to the breath. But you will notice it's not that simple, because even as you direct your attention to the breath, you become more sensitive, you become more attentive, more aware. This is the interesting thing. You become more aware, more attentive. But we need to be more mindful. In other words, you direct your attention to the breath. This breath is like a puppy dog that's on a leash and it's going to run here, run there, and you hold on to the leash. That is your focus. Every time the mind goes away or some distraction comes in, bring your mind back to the breath, back to the breath. The more you do this, the better you become. This is a lifelong practice, so don't worry, just do it. Now today I'm going to try a bit of what's called open mindfulness approach. It means you just watch what is in front of you, just be aware of it. You're watching the breath, and then you may hear sounds. Just acknowledge it's just sound. The sound arises at the ear. You know it is sound, don't follow it, don't say what kind of sound, just sound. Acknowledge it like welcoming a guest at the door. Lift the guest at the door is the ear. Smile at the guest. Sound, and go back to the breath. Do it gently, smoothly. When a thought comes in, you say, oh, did I turn off the gas, or did I lock the window? Then just say, okay, thinking. Just thinking, and then go back to your breath. You feel a bit of itchiness or a little bit of discomfort, just acknowledge it. Be feeling. Go back to the breath. If it is pain, you can even say painful, painful. Just note it. In other words, we don't complain about the pain, we just note it as it is. If the pain is really bad, then it's different, then you adjust yourself a bit. Should not affect your health, in other words. So be mindful whatever arises in any of your senses. Just be aware of it. Smile at it. The smiling helps you to focus. Stay with the breath as long as you can. So today I'm not using the counting, just going straight into watching with an open awareness, open mindfulness rather. If you find this approach helpful to you, you can use it at the start. Relaxed breathing, normal breathing. Now, if you do this well, after a while, you find that you don't have to monitor those sense experiences anymore. You know the thoughts are there, but they are in the background and they don't trouble you. They recede into the background. It's as if the guests are chatting with other guests, so you don't have to worry about them. You may feel some tingling on your skin, but it doesn't bother you. You may hear some sounds out there, it doesn't bother you. You are with your breath. So now you're more focused. Notice the breath coming in, going out. Coming in, going out. And a bit more time now, watching the breath. Notice the flow of the breath in. Notice the breath going out. As you do this, you become more naturally focused on the breath. In, out, in, out. Now, as you focus on your breath, you begin to notice the space between the breath, the in and out, become longer, more peaceful, even joyful. Let it happen. It means you are becoming more relaxed. If you don't feel it yet, it's okay. I mean, if you like counting, you can go back to the counting. Now, if you notice the space, it's the second stage. In, space, out, space. So you'll focus on just the breath and the space. Don't worry about other things. If you still notice other things, you're still in stage 1. So just go on doing it until you are more focused. As you practice, you will understand how your mind, how your breath works. In space, out space. Now, these 2 stages, I can teach you, I can guide you, but stage 3 and 4 happen by themselves, by letting go. Example, in stage 3, you feel the spaces are so peaceful and getting longer that you don't need to say in out anymore. That's called the space. The keyword is space at that stage. You know you're doing it right because you will feel peaceful, even joyful. And also you won't feel your body. So don't feel frightened or anything about this. First timers suddenly feel, wow, I don't feel my body. That's the good sign. If you don't feel your body, you won't get physical pain. So just feel the space, the peace of it in your body and mind. Smile at it. Now in the 4th stage, which is the most important stage, silent stage. Say anything. It's so peaceful, we don't want to say anything. So you can feel the peace. You know the breath is coming in very gently, almost unnoticeable. You know the breath is going out very gently, almost unnoticeable. Sometimes the breath is so subtle you don't notice it at all. There is this deep sense of peace, deep sense of peace. Feel the peace in your body and mind. This is the peace that heals your body, goes down to the very cells of your being. It's what will keep you mentally healthy and bodily healthy, and even slow down your aging process by cutting down stress. This is the wonderful peace, the healing peace. So remember these stages, don't rush them, do not wish for them. You cannot wish for this. It's just the opposite of wishing, of wanting. We always think we want it, then only we get it. Not so. By letting go, you get it. The lesson of renunciation that the breath teaches us. Before we end, review the practice. You gently come out of the meditation and kind of look back and notice what did you experience. You felt peaceful, even for a short while. A flash of really beautiful feeling. Remember that. There's a little keyhole, little window into this wonderful Dharma garden of peace. Remember that moment of peace, that moment of joy. This will help you in your future practice or whenever you need inner peace. Just remember this, feel it. It will also help you in your future meditations. Then also check to see any difficulties you have, what caused it. Just be aware of it. Always suttas teaching you how to make your meditation better. Find out the difficulties and how to deal with them. So this is your review. Here I'm just giving you short instructions on your own. Take your own time. Now before we end, just open your eyes. Just be aware of your surroundings. We're coming back into this world again, the samsaric world. We begin our meditation slowly, gently. We end it also slowly, gently. Graceful meditation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Very good. Now we will start with our talk. Okay. Right. Okay. Now let me see. What do I do now? Not share, is it?
Yeah, you start sharing your screen. Go to your slide.
Okay. Can you see anything now?
All right. Can.
Okay. Here we start with our. This is number 6, right? Lecture number 6, BMM 2021-6, the body, mind, and meditation. Today we are going to look at the second part of perception. Now, I wanted to tell you a very interesting little anecdote, a humorous anecdote in the last lecture, part 1 of perception. It's about perception. Now, I'm going to tell you that very funny story. Some of you who are from Southeast Asia, you know what this is. This is called sambal. Sambal is a hot chili paste. This is sambal belacan. It's got kind of prawn paste in it. It is one of the favorite dishes in Southeast Asia. Okay, so the Thais love it too, and I was in Thailand in the 1980s, during the rains retreat, 3 months rains retreat, around this time, starting in June, July until October. And the Thais have this festival. There's always nice food, and there's this big bowl, just like this bowl of. In fact, it's hipped up. The sambal, the chili paste is hipped up. It looks, to a Dutch person, it looks like jam. Okay, so there's this young boy who was with me, a friend of mine. He asked me, he says, "Wow, this looks delicious, is it delicious?" I mean, I was not looking at him all the time. I saw a bit of what he was saying. I said, "Yeah, this is delicious. One of my favorite food, And I didn't see what he did after that. In fact, behind my back, he thought it was delicious. So he took a big spoon and scooped a generous serving of this sambal, and he spread over his bread. And he put it into his mouth and chewed it. And suddenly I heard a loud scream, and a shriek and a scream saying, "I'm burning, I'm burning." And he threw all the sting into the dustbin and ran to the fridge and looked for some cold milk and guzzled it down. And after that, he came out to me and scolded me and said, "You said it was nice. And it was so hot." Then I realized we have a problem of perception, cultural perception, because I forget that he is Dutch. that he has not really known what this food is. It's really hot, isn't it? So there you can see, when we come to perception, we look at things differently and we react to it differently, and we can also understand differently. So this is why perception is so important. Now, I'm going to go on into a little deeper this time to look at 3 levels or 3 ways that we experience the world, that how we how our mind works, if you like. Okay, another way of saying this is an overarching term would be cognition. This word cognition is quite tricky, but here it's used in a broad sense. How do we cognize things? How do we know things? So don't worry about the technicality of these words. Just take them as they are used for the moment and then learn from them. We know things, we cognize things in 3 ways. The first is the most common way is through the senses. So you see the mind is on the left side and the arrow is pointing to the mind, and the action is called senses. The mind senses. You sense. You are sensing. Sense objects. Your eye sense forms, colors, shapes. Your eye senses sounds, vibrations. Your nose senses smell, and so on. Okay, so this is happening all the time. You can say the senses are always aware of the sense objects. The eye is always aware of forms and so on. Even when we are asleep, our senses are more or less at work, if you like. That's why we dream, okay? Unless we are unconscious. So this is another very fascinating area. So the word aware normally is used here, okay? So this is the first, you can say, very simple, very basic, ongoing experience that we have. We sense things, and it's a kind of bare sensing. It's a kind of neutral, if you like. You know, there's no karma form there usually, and as long as you keep it like that, there's no problem with that. Usually, no problem. Okay. Now, and this of course is happening in the present. So this is where we can say all these things we are experiencing to the senses as sensations. Okay. Now notice how words are used. Again, perception of words. We're going to go into perception of language afterwards. So when you hear the word sensation, wow, you think of some movie or some kind of drama, right? But here sensations is simply a noun for the way we sense things. So here I've got to be aware of how words are used. So this also is the kind of linguistic perception, language perception. So we have to master perception even on a language level so that we get things right, okay? So senses are occurring right now, happening before us. We are hearing things, smelling things, seeing things right now in the present, okay? So this is the one way of looking at our experiences. On another level, we perceive. Now notice here, the arrow has changed direction. The mind perceives mind objects. Now look at the connection here. The connection is very clear. In the case of the top row, the senses are, of course, your physical senses. Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, right? So we say sense, okay? But here, perceive, we are talking about the mind perceiving mind objects. Of course, some of you who are really sharp, you remember the teaching, you will say, don't we perceive the sense objects too? Yes, we do. But for the moment, we're going to look at a narrow view of perceive. The mind looks at its own mind objects, like when we are asleep. When we're asleep, our eyes are not open. We still hear things, but the mind, or the part of the mind, doesn't bother about that. The mind looks through its own records of all those sensations. I see the words are useful now. So the mind creates its own playback, if you like. Okay, so the mind brings back all these favorite snippets from here and there, and then mash it up. And you notice your dreams they often get mixed up, like Alice in Wonderland. So the mind perceives its own objects. So we call them mind objects. All right. So this is the mind working on itself. So we don't say the mind senses itself. Yeah, in a manner of speaking, you can, but the better word is the mind perceives mind objects. And of course, if you want to be a bit exact, you can say those are percepts. Those are percepts. What the mind perceives are percepts. From word percept is a rare noun. It's very useful here. Now, the interesting thing here is what we perceive normally is from the past, because we remember something, that we know it, and then we recognize. We say, oh, okay, this is what it is. All right, so up to that point, we recognize. This is how we know things, by recognizing, remembering. Okay, so notice perception also is very important, helping us to know things. Our knowledge, our intelligence has to do with perception, right? Senses alone is not enough. So perception is very useful too. But then it's like a double-edged sword. It's got these pros and cons. And we'll come to this again later on. The important thing now is to remember the mind perceives mind objects. They're called percepts. And using past memories, we recognize this, what's happening now. And this also happens in our waking life, right? Now we come to the third level. Now we come to something even more dramatic, if you like. The mind conceives thoughts. Look at the three words again. To sense, to perceive, and to conceive. These are the three ways our mind usually acts. Okay. Senses, we simply experience what is before us, the five senses. Perceive, we recognize certain way of recognizing things in our own personal way through past memories. We recognize things. In a sense, you can say the sense is cognize, perceive is recognize. So you see how now words have a deeper meaning, right? We recognize. And then on the third level, we conceive. When you think of conceive, you think of, baby is coming into being, right? Yeah, we give birth to thoughts, ideas, theories, views. Okay, so this is what's happened now. The mind creates its own ideas. And we call them views, of course. And views often have to do with the future, because when we have a view, we say, this is what I think it is, this is what I think it should be, this is what I want it to be, right? And in Pali, you have this special group of future tenses, like bhavisati. There's this very interesting sutta called the Dona Sutta, where this Brahmin donor, he's able to read footprints. Not just people read palm print, but he reads footprints. So he saw the Buddha's footprint, and he said, wow, this is amazing. It's no ordinary person. So he follows the footprint, he meets the Buddha. And he asked the Buddha, what, in modern English, we say, translate as, what are you, or who are you? I mean, he knows, he wants to know what the Buddha is. Is he a human being? Is he a deva? Is he some heavenly being, right? So the word he used is bhavisati. Now, bhavisati, if you translate literally, it's a future tense. It means, what will you become? So if you translate, what will you become, doesn't make very much sense in that sutta. So you have to translate something like, he's curious about the Buddha. He says, what are you? How can I think of you? How should I think of you? So that kind of idea. So there is this future kind of idea of like, you're not sure what it is, right? So this is the conceive. Okay, you conceive something which is not there. It's just your own views, all right? So this is so these three ways of cognizing is the way we live and act and learn things. But the Buddha, of course, tells us we have to be very careful, because this is where we can also blunder. For example, these mental perversions arise in these ways. So we have to really keep an eye, as they say, keep an eye on what's going on. Otherwise, there is what's called perversion of mind. We distort what we sense. Okay, so this is called chitta vipallasa. For example, we see a mirage, okay? If you first time you saw a mirage, you thought in the desert, and you think it's real. By any definition, perhaps you can say what you see is real. It's there, you can see it, it's palpable, but you can never reach it because it depends from where you are and the light and so the heat and so on. So you see the mirage, but the mirage is non-existent in that, I don't know what you call it, the real space or the time space where it's supposed to see, if you calculate it, triangulation, where it is, there's nothing there. It's just like the end of the rainbow. There's no end of the rainbow, you see? So if you believe the rainbow is physical, you can go to the end of the rainbow, yeah, maybe you might find a clock of gold there, but it is a mental perversion. It's not there. So we're being warned about this kind of distortions of the senses. So this is the first one, it's quite common, right? Now the second one is perversion of perception. Saññā vipallasa. Here we meet someone and then we remember meeting him the last time. He was quite nasty, and now we see we don't like him. But actually, it's a different situation. So we have misjudged him, right? Or on the other hand, we met someone very nice before, and we think he's really nice now, but then he happens to be a con man, and then we're in trouble. So this is the perversion of perception. So we have to go beyond perception, more than just perceiving things, right? Then we come to the last one, this perversion of views. This is very common, of course. When your views, we tend to look on it narrowly, one way. It's like we're living on one side of the mountain, and we look at that one side, we think that is the only view. Then the people on the other side say, oh, their view is better, and so on. But all sides are views of the same mountain. All are correct, right? So if we say the other side is wrong, we're just perverting the truth. We are confusing ourselves. So what happens here is actually that there are four ways that we pervert the way we sense things, the way we perceive things, the way we conceive things. The first thing is, what is impermanent, we think it to be permanent, right? For example, we see building with a huge, strong building. We think, wow, this building will last. No? And suddenly in Miami, you have this building, this condo collapses, right? It's not so common in America, but it's common in India. It happens in Malaysia also, even in Singapore. So even this huge, strong building may appear permanent, but they can collapse anytime. We have to be very careful. So do not misconstrue. Do not take what is around us to be permanent. It's all impermanent. Number two, painful. We have to understand the nature of pain. We see a difference between pleasure and pain, right? We think that, oh, whenever you have something nice, wow, that's what I want, you know. But if you have all the time, let's say you like to eat something nice and you keep eating that nice thing all the time, after that you become full and wow, you can't eat anymore. Actually, it causes you pain. What causes pleasure? What brings pleasure also causes pain, but they're interconnected. In that sense, you hear some teachers talking strangely that pleasure is the cause of pain. That's the meaning of it. You must know when to stop. That's what the precepts are about. The precepts are telling us, know when to stop. That is the spirit of the precepts. Know when to stop. Okay, you enjoy whatever is nice that you have without breaking the precepts, but you must know when to stop. Then you will really enjoy a happy life. Know when to stop. And when you're meditating, you're also learning when to stop. Of course, the word that we use is to let go. Okay. So pain is when we get too attached to things. Non-self, now this is a bit tricky. We are so used to the idea that, look, here I am, I was born 72 years ago, so there must be something permanent in me, you know. But you look at the photograph of yourself when you're very young, and now you find you're very different. So we say we are the same, yet not the same. Okay, so there's this change, this continuity that we see gives us the illusion that there's something permanent there. This is very tricky. I have a student in Australia. I don't know whether you're watching this. Probably you are. So this person is asking the question, how do I know there is no self? I mean, I'm so used to the idea that there must be a self inside me, something permanent, right? So what we wish and what is real are quite different things, right? So here, self is the idea here is that there's some kind of essence behind us. There's something permanent and fixed. But what is it? You can sense this, you can see this, you can try to imagine it, but that's all, you see? So we have no control over all our senses. All that we are, in the previous Friday Sutta study, you remember the first Sutta we studied was called the Sabba Sutta. What is the all? The all that we can know, all our senses, all our means of knowledge, and all that we can know are the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, and their respective objects. That's all. So all these are impermanent, and we only know things to change. If there is no change, you can't know things. We'll come to this interesting point again in a while. A very beautiful experiment to show you. It's amazing how we often get tricked by this idea that there must be something permanent in our lives. Okay, so let's just keep it that way for a while. Now the last one is what is foul, or what is impure. We think that it is pure. Like, for example, we look at our body, or we look at someone else's body, we say, oh, look at what a nice body this person has. But imagine you don't wash for one day. Wow, you begin to smell. It smells terrible, right? So there you are. That's the way the body is, right? So yes, you can sometimes see as beautiful. You even just see of the Buddha as a beautiful image, right? But there is still this foulness, this physical impurity, because that's the nature of the body. It has to excrete waste material, things like that. So these are realities we should know so that we get the right picture of things. That's the meaning here. So you want to read more of this, you can see the references here, right? SD 17.4, section 5, section 9.4. You can read up something there. And you want, and there's something else here, S35.116, okay? You can read SD 7.4, you can read more about what we have studied here. Okay. All right, now we look at the cycle of, this is a bit of revision. Let's start with what we are. We are our senses. We are our eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. So that's called ayatana, faculties. And these senses are conscious, okay? So in the suttas, we speak of the conscious body, because this is number one, the starting point. The conscious body made up of sense faculties. And you remember in one of the earlier lessons, right? The eye, there are 6 senses, just start with the eye, sees form, there is eye consciousness. From this triangle, this tree, you get sense contact. After, in our secondary school science, we call it sense stimulus, or plural sense stimuli, okay? And once our senses get stimulated, feeling arises. There's a gap. The arrow represents a gap, right? The sense contact is represented by sensation that we earlier talked about. We just sense things. On the sense level, it's neutral, right? It's when we start looking at it as pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, that's when feelings arise. So this is a bit of revision. I want you to know this really well, because this knowledge will help you. So feeling arises through sense contact, okay? So just be aware of this, or watch this video again and reflect on it. You know, the word Vedana also comes from the word to know. So to feel also is to know in a certain way. And then there is perception. Now here, you may say, how come perception seems to come later? Actually, these things happen very fast. It kind of like, it happens almost at the same time. But when the Buddha wants to teach us to analyze it, then he kind of lay it out in a nice diagram so that we understand the process better. It's like the atomic diagram, okay? So here, that feeling arises, but then we start looking at it and say, oh, this is nice. I remember something nice in the past. Now I like it too again, you know, or something bad happened in the past, right? And I remember this and now I don't like it, right? So this perception, okay, how we recognize things, in a sense, how we value add things or how we judge our experiences, perception. Saññā. Okay, look at the word saññā. Ñā means to know, and then sang is like com in English. Con or com means to put together. So we put together this, how we look at things. Yeah. And thinking about it. Vitakka. Taka already means think. Vitakka means to break it up into bits and pieces, analyze. Okay, we start thinking about it. I like this, or this is nice. But especially when you go shopping and find your mind's really chatting with you. So it's not just thinking, you know, it's the mind chatting, actually, chatting, telling us all kinds of ideas. And then this chatting explodes into thoughts, papancha. Remember this word? I spoke about it last time. Mental proliferation. The word mental is missing. You can add it in, mental proliferation. You see, in Pali, the word papancha means that. But if you translate literally, it just means proliferation. But it refers to the mind. So in English, we have to translate it as mental proliferation, the mind exploding into many thoughts. It's not just one thought, many thoughts. And then we start all over again with the senses. We go round and round here. So this is, so you notice here, there is perception here, right? Here's perception, and then here's conception, okay? And then here's sensing. They're all there, this triangle, all right, more or less. It's coincidental, there's a triangle. That's how these three work in our lives. They kind of go around, keep going around in a samsaric circle. This is the nature of our mind, okay? It's basic idea that you need to know. I'm going to show you this time. Again, the idea of perception as difference. We know things through difference, through impermanence. If there's no impermanence, we would not know things. You see here a circuit diagram. Every science student in primary in secondary school knows this, and we call this a switch. Okay. I was going to, before this, I was going to ask you a riddle. Actually, I was going to ask you, what is useful when it does not exist? What is useful when it does not exist? Yes, the answer is a switch. Now the question is, how is that, right? How is that? Now look at this switch. Now notice, okay, now it's on, the red light is on. Now it's off, there's no light, okay? So if I were to, okay, now let me see, how do I stop it? Okay, I'm not good at this. Oops. Okay, now you see that this thing has stopped, so the circuit is on and the red light is on all the time. Okay, now there was this linguist who wrote something about this very interesting point. Someone called Gregory Bateson, in his book called Mind and Nature. So he says that a switch illustrates how our mind works on differences. We only know things because of, how do we know a banana? Because we remove all the non-bananas, okay? So something like that. So here we call it a switch. Okay, here now the switch looks like this, okay? Oops, I'm sorry, let me go back. All right. So when the switch is open, it's not useful because there's no light. The current doesn't flow. The fan doesn't work. So the switch is actually is not a thing. It's a break in the circuit. But we invent something and we can have control over this, and we give it a name, and it sounds as if there is a thing. But if you think deeply, there's no such thing as a switch, because the moment we switch it on, the circuit is full, normal switch, and that's when the current flows. So think this for a minute. And this applies to a lot of idea of non-self and what's going on when we understand things, right? Through differences, through change, all right? The switch is not a thing, it is an action, okay? Let me just read to you an excerpt from his 1979 book called Mind and Nature, okay? Page 120 and the following. So he says, the switch considered as part of an electric circuit does not exist when it is in the on position from the point of view of the circuit. It is not different from the conducting wire which leads to it and the wire which leads away from it. It is merely more conductor, more conductor. Conversely, but similarly, when the switch is off, it does not exist from the point of view of the circuit. It is nothing but a gap between two conductors, which themselves exist only as conductors when the switch is on. In other words, the switch is not except at the moments of its change of setting. Change of setting. And the concept switch has thus a special relation to time. Time means change, right? It is related to the notion change rather than to the notion object. It's a beautiful scientific statement on non-self. All right, so think about this one. Now we can see this in nature also. You see a drop of water, look at the ripples moving towards you as you sit beside a lake. The water seems to move, the water starts, something drops, and then you see this beautiful ripples coming out, right? Crests and troughs. And then you think the water is moving towards you. You think the ripple is moving towards you. This is the idea in your mind. But the reality is, we look carefully. Next time, watch. This is a reflection I often teach people to just reflect on this ripples in the water. There seems to be water moving, but nothing is moving. It's just the waves going up and down. Okay, let's look at it. Okay, here waves going up and down. See here, this is the scientific diagram of it. You see the ball is going in a circle, but the waves seem to be moving. Even the waves are not really moving. They're just kind of going up and down, up and down. And then later on, you see another interesting part where the diagram shows you how the ball is not moving really. It's just going in the same circle. Okay, there you are, you see. Even the water is not moving. You see the dots are not moving. They're just kind of moving up and down on it. So this appearance of motion, but nothing is moving. So moving yet not moving. So it makes sense to talk in that way, right? Even when you watch a movie show, you see those, you know, those old movies, celluloid, right? You see some, they call the movies because they seem to move, that's on the big screen, and you start crying and laughing according to the action. But then in reality, there's nothing moving on the screen. It's just lights. And the frame must move at a certain rate each time so that your mind sees it as motion. We trick ourselves, and that's called entertainment. Okay, so okay, now we come to something new, something very common yet profound. Perception in language. When we talk, we often assume a lot of things, and we often say the wrong things, and then we quarrel with people. And Facebook is a really good place to learn all these things. We easily quarrel over simple things like little kids, you know. and they're not even important things, and we don't even know the people we are quarreling with. Isn't that silly? So it's good to know the nature of language, how we perceive language. There is so-called standard language, standard English, and one of those linguists try to, remove the flaw in language and introduce something called E-prime language. Not many people have heard of this. In fact, I talk about this, wow, some 40, 50 years ago in those early courses. I think people like Wing Sun, have done the courses, maybe remember all this. So now, okay, let's see, how do we talk in normal standard English? We say, Dave is a good person. In Malaysia especially, it's very easy to make friends with someone. If you're a politician, you want to befriend someone, buy satay. You give free satay. Free satay is like these little pieces of meat on a skewer, and it is roasted, and you eat it with a very nice gravy with peanut and spice. So you buy food for someone, the person will like you. So he says he's a good person. Why? Why is he a good person? Dave gave me a nice satay treat. All right. Now, you see, the sentence Dave is a good person. Wow, it is really universal. We say this is the ease of identity. Dave equals good person. That means from day one until now, it's a good person. Is it true? He could be Hitler. He could be a serial killer, right? We say he's a good person. Why? Because he bought me satay. He bought me a nice, gave me a nice treat. So we got to reword what we're saying. We can say, I like him because he gave me a nice treat. Fine. But to say he's a good person is overdoing it. You see the problem of the language now. And this is very common when you look around and listen to the way people talk. You can reverse it and say, Dave is a bad person. Why? He did not give me a satay treat. Again, that sounds very silly, isn't it? So be careful of using the word is. E-prime language warns us against using of the verbs to be. Is, was, were, okay? Am also, I am, you are. So in other words, you've got to rephrase whenever you want to use is, am, was, were, okay? We got, what are we talking about? Don't overgeneralize, like saying someone is good, someone is bad, okay? Let's try one more sentence. Here, you often hear very pious Buddhists. My teacher was an arahat. Okay, here I'm using was, previously was is. All right, you often hear, my favorite retort would be, I say, wow, that's wonderful. So you are also an arahat, huh? Right? So if someone says, my teacher was an arahat, he must be an arahat too, because it takes an arahat to recognize another, otherwise you won't know. All right, so here again, you got to examine, what are you saying here? What do you mean when you say so-and-so was an arahat? Okay, look on the right side. What you mean is, to me, he appeared to be holy, but not an arahat, because you got to know what or who an arahat really is. Now, in the sutras, we do have the Buddha and some other great disciples saying they are arahats, but that is in the sutras, everything's clear there, and we are given reasons why they are arahats. So when we say the Buddha is an arahat, that makes sense, because you're talking about the Buddha as an awakened being, all right? Also, it is safe to say that because the Buddha already has passed away, all right? Now, that's the funny thing, it's not so right when you say the Buddha was an arahat. That is why in my translations, I often use what is called the historical or narrative present. The Buddha is an arahat. The Buddha teaches us not to do evil. So this is the historical present. I'm talking about this truth, as if it's happening now, because it's our universal truth. So in this case, it's the opposite of E prime language. The is does apply because we are talking about something true, something real, right? But normally in the world out there, we are referring to the world itself, which is a very different situation. So this difference is very important to know. Okay. Now let's look at another example, a simpler example. The lotuses are white. What's wrong with this sentence? The lotuses are white. Just think for a while. Just think for a while. The lotuses are white. Anybody wants to say anything about this? Why this sentence is wrong from what I've said? Anyone? You can unmute yourself. You can put up your hand, unmute yourself right now. We'll pick you. Anyone?
I think not all lotuses are white, right?
Yes. Okay. Very true. What else? Suppose they are all white lotuses in that vase, and I say the lotuses are white. I'm not really wrong, but something is wrong. What is wrong?
It's general, I think.
Something more specific. Anyone?
The lotus is, but there are parts of the lotus.
Sorry,
white.
please raise your hand and give the answer because there are too many people. Sorry.
Raise your hand, please.
Raise your hand, please.
Yeah, right now we'll call you. Right now we'll identify you. Who wants to talk? Yes.
So the lotus is white, but not the whole lotus is white. There's also green in the lotus. The leaves and the stem is green.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, if you look carefully, you find there are shades, the hues of other colors on the lotus. But even then, usually you will say lotus is white. We conventionally understand it. The point is this: if I were to shine a red light over the lotuses, how do they look? They all look red, right? There you are. So they're normal white lotuses. So the point here, anyway, is you got to be much more exact in how you say it. Even when you say a lotus is white, this is even more serious, okay? Because when you say a lotus is white, it sounds like a universal truth. Any lotus is white. Like someone earlier said, there are red lotuses and there are blue lotuses, so it's not a fact here, all right? So how do we say it more correctly? The lotuses look white. Now, there you are. Now it sounds better, right? Now you kind of have a better idea. The lotuses look white. You see the difference between using the verbs to be the are. You don't use the are. You say the lotuses look white. We perceive it. Look means you perceive, you see, you perceive through the eye. They look white. I perceive them as white. Instead of saying a lotus is white, it looks white. It's nearer the truth. So here we're talking about something like right speech, in other words. Okay. Now let's last example. Okay, this one is a funny one. You saw someone last night and you say he was drunk. Why? Because he smells of whiskey and he was tottering, couldn't walk properly. You say, oh, he was drunk, right? That's what you thought. But then by right, you should say he acted drunk because you didn't really know what happened. Maybe he had a fight and then somebody spilled some whiskey on him. He was trying to defend somebody who got attacked by another, and then he was not strong, so he suffered pain. So he came out looking like a drunk person, but he was not drunk really. So you got to find out what's going on here. So basically, this kind of language teaches us not to judge people. When you're counseling, you're taught not to judge people, to listen non-judgmentally. So these are the kinds of teachings behind this, understanding the nature of perception through language. So do reflect on this and then see how you can improve the way you talk and understand things and not to be judgmental in the way you talk. Okay, so this is the meaning here, perception of language. Okay, I'll take a break here, 5 minutes, and then we'll come back to continue our talk. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Piya. We'll take a 5-minute break. Please do not log out. Just stay connected so we can continue as soon as possible. Thank you. Hello, Thomas. You just joined us. Just join.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the first part?
Hello, Thomas. Can you hear me? This is Ratna here. Hello. Yeah, we are taking a 5-minute break, so we'll come back in a short while. Hello, for those who just joined us, please note that we are taking a 5-minute break. We'll come back in a short while. Thank you. Piya, just hold on a while. Huh?
Okay, sure.
Hello, please turn on your video so that we know you have come back to the class.
Okay, very good. We're going to start again. Oh, right, Thomas, good to see you. You missed the first half, so do listen to the first half of the talk now. Okay, shall we start again, Ratna? Resume?
Okay, yes, please.
Right, now, in the first half, I have introduced you the nature of sensing, perceiving, conceiving, the three aspects of how we cognize things, how we experience things. Then I spoke about perception as change, that is the switch, example of the switch, and then perception as emptiness, that is the nature of the ripples, for example. And then I spoke about perception in language of perception, where we have to be a bit more mindful and a bit more exact of how we talk, and also understand how other people talk. All right. Now we go a little deeper. We look at perception as idea. This is the Dhamma teaching. So in the Mahavedala Sutta, M. Majjhima, or middle length sayings, middle length teaching, Sutta 44, the question is asked, perception, it is said I was so. In what connection I was so? Is it called perception? What does it perceive? Basically, the question is, what is perception? So then the person replies and says, it perceives I was so. It perceives, therefore it is called perception. Now in English, it doesn't sound much here. Perception is the noun of perceive. But in Pali, if you look on the right-hand side, to perceive is saññāti, okay? And then you have the iti at the end. Iti is a like close quote like that. So it's joined together, we say saññāti iti. So when you hear the T sound, you mean we're like quoting. It's like in English we say quote, unquote, okay? Saññāti iti, saññā. And then when we translate, we start from the back. It is called saññā because it perceives. It is called etymology, how words are formed, right? Now, if you look at saññāti, janati is to know. And then you have sang in front again, like in the English prefix on or com. We put together things, all right? Whereas consciousness is vijanati. We is to like separate, to break up, to analyze. So you analyze what you know through seeing, smelling, tasting, and so on. Whereas saññāti, you put it together. So it's called saññā, okay? Perception. What does it perceive? It perceives blue, it perceives yellow, it perceives red, it perceives white. It perceives avuso, it perceives, therefore it is called perception. So this is from Majjhima Nikaya ST 30.2 if you want to go into details. Or you can look up 17.4, section 7.1.4. Now here, the sutta says we perceive colors. One reason is because you see a color, then you remember it, right? So it's easier to use an example of colors. For the reason perception is defined by how we remember, how we recognize colors. So this is one basic sutta definition of perception as an idea, how we form ideas in our minds. Okay, we recognize the way we recognize colors. Now we go a little deeper. We look at the perception process. You remember I showed you a diagram. It goes around in a circle. But now we look a little deeper from the Madhu Pindika Sutta, the Honey Ball Sutta, M18, section 16. You see, comma 16 means section 16, paragraph 16, and then /1 colon 111 means volume 1, page 111 of the Pali Text Society Pali edition published in London 100 years ago. Okay, you also have the Burmese version, the Sinhalese version, the Thai versions to compare. Okay, here we take one of the senses, the eye, and then see what happens in the perception process. Friends, dependent on the eye and form, eye consciousness arises. When eye sees form, eye consciousness arises. How does this happen? You know, let's say as you wake up, you're a bit groggy, and then you look around, say, am I dreaming or am I awake? And then you start seeing things, and then your eye consciousness arises. Okay, that's how. That's the meaning of this line. The meeting of the three is contact. Eye meets form meets eye consciousness. Eye consciousness also can be translated as attention, your attention. Okay. So when these three meet together, you have what's called contact. Remember contact, phassa, we talk about this stimulus, right? Sense stimulus. So this is a bit of revision to make sure you know what's going on. Now we have a bit of dependent arising, paticca samuppada. So here, because of contact, with contact as condition, there is feeling. From contact arises feeling. How is that? We look at it and then we feel, okay? We feel, I like it, I don't like it, and so on. What one feels, one perceives, right? You recognize it. You say, oh, I feel I like it because now I recognize it. I remember something in the past, right? So it goes like that. What one perceives, one thinks about, right? You start thinking and say, oh yeah, I like this, I don't like this, whatever, okay? You think more about it, and then what one thinks about, one mentally proliferates, it explodes into 1,000 thoughts, right? So this is a summary, this is a revision of what we did a while ago. Then I've simplified this last part. What a person mentally proliferates or explodes in thoughts due to perceptions regarding past, present, and future forms cognizable to the eye. Okay, so in other words here, from what we see, from the forms that arise in our eyes, 1,000 thoughts explode in our minds. This is, you can say, experience through seeing. So this, those of you who have attended the sutta class 2 days ago, in the first sutta, Sabba Sutta, we say that the first base of knowledge is the eye and form, right? So this is the example, eye and form. Okay, so this is related to the Sabba Sutta again in the talk I gave on Friday on the Rohitasa Sutta series. And then, anyway, you want to look at the sutta, a couple of slides earlier, it's given the link, I mean the source is given there. Okay, so this is talking about the eye. Now let's look at the rest. The ear, same thing. The whole cycle goes through. We repeat the whole cycle. Then you hear something, and then sounds and ear consciousness. Then there is contact. From contact, there's feeling arises, and from feeling, there's perception, and so on. Same thing with the nose when you smell something. Same thing with when you taste something. When you eat something, it brings memories. When you feel something, right? Like when you hold someone, you feel something, or you feel or the conditions around you. And of course, the last one is the mind. When you think of something, friends, dependent on mind and mind objects, mind consciousness arises. Now notice each of these, they got their own fixed object and consciousness, right? So look at number 2, friends dependent on the ear and sounds. ear consciousness arises. It's fixed. You cannot switch them around. Friends dependent on the nose and smells, nose consciousness arises. Dependent on the tongue and taste, tongue consciousness arises. Dependent on the body and touches, body consciousness arises. Friends dependent on the mind and mind objects, mind consciousness arises. Some of you may talk about synesthesia, but then some people, they can hear colors and so on. You know, I've read about this, very interesting. But this does not happen on a sense level, it happens on a mind level. The mind is the one that makes all this up. Anyway, each of these goes through the same cycle as the earlier one, the iron form. So the meeting of the three, you can choose any three, okay? Ear, sound, ear consciousness, and so on. So they come in sets of three, triads of three. They all go through the same process. The meeting of any three is contact. With contact as condition, there is feeling. When what one feels, one perceives. What one feels, one perceives. Remember, just to reflect on this. What one perceives, one thinks about. What one thinks about, one mentally proliferates, it explodes. Now you have the language of the suttas, a bit complex now. Okay, I've given you the simplified one earlier on. If you're not sure what's going on here, just read out the earlier one. What a person mentally proliferates is the source through which proliferative notions, views, due to perception, rooted in perception, affect us. Impact one regarding past, future, and present mind objects, cognizable through the mind. So this applies to past, present, and future. The thoughts come from the past, present, and future. And in this case, it's the mind. It can happen in any of the other senses. This is a very deep teaching. It takes time to understand. So just reflect on it meanwhile. Now we have another simple diagram to help you remember. So here, also dependent on the iron forms, I consciousness arises. What is this? Let's look at, and then when the three meet, there is contact, right? So this is form, okay? This, in terms of the five aggregates, Panchakanda, we regard this as form. In other words, these are all external objects, all the six sense objects, right? Sight, sound, smell, taste, touches, and thoughts. Okay, they are regarded as rupa in this sense. Okay, and then you see the arrow is just to show you that refers to form arising at that level. Then with contact as condition, there is feeling. So what is this? Of course, this is feeling, right? This is the second aggregate. Okay. And then you have the third aggregate coming now. What one feels, one perceives. So the third aggregate is perception. But this is the last column, perception, right? So yeah, those are the first three aggregates. And then what's next? What one perceives, one thinks about. Okay, we think about what we perceive. Those are formations. Karma starts there. Okay, formations. And then finally, what one thinks about, one mentally proliferates. So it starts growing in the mind, in our consciousness. So that is number 5, the fifth aggregate. Okay. Now you notice the fifth aggregate also exists at the start with the I consciousness, right? So these are, you can see the 5 aggregates at work at the same time inside us. So the 5 aggregates is one way of looking at how we experience life, one model, if you like. And then you have the other, the perception cycle. So the different ways of looking at the same thing. Now let's look at perception as aggregate again, simplified. Oh, there's a typo then, perception as an aggregate, okay? So there's the I sees a cup, and there is I consciousness. So we link it up, right? You have contact. So this is the triangle of contact. Instead of I, you can put ear consciousness, right? And so then the eye, there's sound, and then eye consciousness, there's contact. And then remember, from contact, what do we get? Feeling. Feeling arises. And then from feeling, what arises? We perceive. Perception arises. We perceive things. What we perceive, we think about it. So thoughts come from there. And then from our thinking, there is mental proliferation. So this is a simple diagram. This is what we have been talking about previously. All right. So this is to help you remember all those 5 aggregates and the perception cycle. There you are. You can see the 5 aggregates again. Form is the cup. We see form, and then the object, right? And then there's feeling, and there is perception. And here formations. When we think, we form ideas. We form from ideas comes speech, and then we have action. Right? Those are formations. You have what's called mental formations, speech formation, and body formation. So 3 kinds of karma. And then you have consciousness, mental proliferation. This is not just consciousness, it goes down into the unconscious. It stays there all the time, lurking, controlling us like a puppet master. Right, so now we look at the functions of perception. We go a little deeper. Here we are looking at the Saññā Nibbāna Sutta, A 4.179. Ananda asked Sariputta why some, in fact many, do not find final nirvana. Why we do not attain nirvana? It's because of perception. Sariputta replies and says, here, Avuso Ananda, beings do not understand as it really is, that this perception is conducive to decline. That perception distracts us. Right? If you're not mindful, perception distracts us. All that I've talked about, the various ways we can be distracted. So that's why we've got to know what perception is and master our perception. So this is the biggest problem we have. It can cause us to decline our practice, to be distracted in our practice. So understand the nature of perception, then you won't be distracted. Now, second function or second quality of perception, that this perception is conducive to stability. Okay, in this case, this is positive. If you understand the nature of perception, then your practice becomes more stable. You move on correctly. Okay, so in Pali is titi. Titi means to stand, literally stand, and also means stability. Bhagya saññā. It is the perception that is conducive to stability, right? Then the third function of perception, that this perception is conducive to distinction. Visesa bhagya saññā. Here, distinction usually means attaining of stream winning up to just below arahathood. So if you really understand the nature of perception, you can even attain stream winning, right? For example, reflecting on impermanence, which we'll come to in a moment. So notice again, perception normally will cause us to decline, to be distracted. We are not aware of what it really is. But when you understand it, then it stabilizes your practice. You keep practicing in a wonderful way. And then it brings you stream winning in this life itself. And if you go on practicing over time, that this perception is conducive to penetration, nibbeda bhagya saññā. Penetration through the darkness of ignorance, attaining of arahathood, awakening. So imagine, perception is so important to us, but it can be bad in the first part, but there are 3 positive aspects of it when we understand it. When you don't understand it, it leads to decline. When you understand it, it is the stability, and so on. This is the reason, this is the condition why some beings do not win final nirvana in this life itself, because of not understanding the nature of perception. So this is from the Saññā Nibbāna Sutta, A 4.179. You want to read more about it, look at this number, 17.4, brackets 11. Okay, we're almost finishing now. So what is it that causes us to be distracted and suffer through perception? Perception leads to all those anusayas, all those latent tendencies, all those thinking and so on. There are 7 of them identified in the Abhidhamma. So the first is quite universal, the latent tendency of sensual lust. This is deep inside our unconscious. We're always looking for things to please us, okay? Especially sensual pleasures, because it refers to the senses. Our senses are always looking outwards, always trying to collect information, collect data, and that's called enjoyment. Then the opposite, what we don't like, we push away, is called aversion, okay? And we tend to measure what we like, what we don't like. And we look at people also, we measure, okay, how useful is this person to me, or this person is not useful, I'm not going to talk to him. That's conceit. We measure ourselves against others and treat them accordingly. It's like the PDI, you know, the power distance index, you know, how we treat others depending on what we get. And then, of course, all these rooted in views. We have all kinds of ideas, what we want in life, or what life should be, and so on. Then, because we're not wise, despite all the views we have lots of doubts. Because we try not to show we doubt, but it's there. Why? We quarrel. So that shows that there is doubt. We're not sure with ourselves. And then there is number 6. There is a latent tendency of the lust for existence. Latent tendency, it means it's there. We're not even aware of it, and it works on us. Lust for existence means we want to be this, we want to be that. You just look at Facebook, you see people putting nice pictures of themselves and saying all the nice things they've done. It's just not really bad in itself, but you find some people overdo it, you know, and they just want the attention, and they feel good, they feel very depressed if nobody presses like, you know, things like that. There's an interesting article today in the papers which says the like button is evil. That's really interesting. Okay. Of course, but lust for existence also means the desire to be reborn in some happy states, you know, and the belief that, you know, the gods are going to look after you, things like that. All these are rooted in ignorance. Okay, so because of ignorance, we perceive things wrong, and because we perceive things wrong, it fits ignorance, right? So it goes round as a snake biting its own tail. That which in the world is pleasant and likable, there the tendency to sensual lusts of beings lie latent, right? In other words, the chances of us getting caught up with desiring comes from getting caught up with what is pleasurable and likable. Now, it's not that something is bad, it's just that you got to know when to stop. Okay, always remember to know when to stop. That which is in the world is unpleasant and unlikable, there the tendency to aversion is hatred, dislike of beings lies latent, right? So remember, these are all concepts in our own minds. Something's nice, something's not nice. So that's how we build up our own latent tendencies. We feed our own latent tendencies. Whereas in these 2 states, this pleasant, unpleasant, in this liking, disliking, this ding-dong battle, liking is pulling towards you, disliking is pushing away. Ignorance continuously occurs because of ignorance. So too conceit, wrong view, and doubt. Okay. Of course, you can include lust for existence also here, although it's not mentioned. So this is the latent tendency of beings, how we are caught up with this monster lying deep in our unconscious, controlling us, keeping us in samsara, suffering and reborn again and again. Okay, this is the last slide. So what do we do? What do we practice? Now we have here, this is from the Satta Saññā Sutta, A 7.46. There are 7 kinds of perceptions we can practice. perceptions are. Now we refer to perception as meditation. Okay, perception as, or perception in meditation, or perception as meditation. So, for example, look at this one. Perception of foulness is Asubasana. This is basically reflecting on the body as being impure. This body needs to be clean very often, otherwise, it'll be smelly. So this is to overcome attachment to the body. It's not an easy practice. Okay, you're not recommended to do this by itself. You must close this with loving kindness if you practice this. This helps to overcome lust. It's more helpful for lustful people, and they're the ones who are less likely to do this kind of meditation. There is perception of death, marana saññā, very similar to marana sati, but here marana saññā is I think it's a bit gentler. You kind of just reflect, recognize that, look at your pictures, say, oh, look, I'm grown much older now compared to, say, pictures taken 30 years ago, and I won't be living forever. So when you think like that, then you begin to ask yourself, how am I living now? Am I living usefully? Am I becoming wiser? Or, yesterday Ratna told me something very interesting. Many of her old friends are meeting her again through the internet. Many of them are looking up to her like a teacher. And then one of them said, I'm retired, right? I mean, he's a very intelligent woman. She's been a teacher, headmistress. And she's like, say 60. Imagine you're still young and healthy at 60 nowadays. And then you've got nothing to do, She said, I feel like just waiting for death, it's terrible. I want to do something useful. I said, okay, you come to the right place. We'll teach you some useful things to do here, all right? So the Dhamma makes us feel, gives us meaning and purpose in life. I wake up every morning, 5 o'clock. Then I tell myself, oh, this is wonderful, I'm alive and I can do so much today. I can go on with my sutta work, I can write the reflection, answer some Dhamma questions, maybe, of course, prepare for my Zoom talks. There's a purpose in life with the Dhamma. Chat with you all, So this is what makes life meaningful. You have people to look up to with kindness, to learn from, and so on, and just to be happy with. This is a wonderful thing, as a Buddhist, right? So share your wisdom, because you have nothing to share, then the friendship is purposeless, right? So you got to have something. You must have wisdom. As we grow older, Buddhism gives you wisdom. Right? Don't wait until you're old to study Buddhism. The earlier you start, the better. Of course, it's not too old to start, but the point is start now, basically. Then you can learn more, okay? But what you learn now is never lost. So reflection on perception of death is a very useful thing. I often do that, so that I'm motivated to work. Then there's a perception of loathsomeness of food, ahara patikula saññā. If you tend to overeat, is one's way of losing weight. You look at the food, say, oh, this food is going to rot. Very soon it's going to rot. You keep food long enough, somewhere it will rot, it will become smelly. And when you get the bowl of rotten food, rotten soup, bad curry, look at it. So this is what happens to food, and you have a real sense of what food is. You don't get carried away by it. So this is a kind of moderating practice for you to keep the middle way, not to overeat. The perception of not delighting in all the world. Sabba loke anabhirata saññā. Here is, don't get caught up with the world. The world is impermanent, much of it is false. These are especially for socializers, people who feel that their only meaning in life is to win the attention of others. People being nice to them, and they're nice to everyone, and there's nothing in between. So this is a little tricky to practice, but it is possible. Now we come to the famous one, number 5, that I've been talking about again and again, and I stress again now. The perception of impermanence is the easiest to practice. Anicca saññā, right? This talk's going to end, right? And then things change. So impermanence also is a reflection on change. So this is the one that we should be practicing. It's very easy. Number 6, the perception of suffering in the impermanence. So this goes a little deeper. When you look into impermanence, you might notice there is suffering. He brings suffering. So, of course, if you do this, you notice this, then do metta, balance up with loving kindness. Okay. Anicca dukkha saññā. 7, the perception of non-self in the suffering. Dukkha anatta saññā. Like when there is suffering, there is no one suffering, no who. There is only the suffering that's going on right now. If you look at it, that's all there is. But then you start saying, I am suffering. Then the suffering becomes worse because you own it. You say, I am suffering. You are the one who said it. Okay? The suffering is just suffering. This suffering is mine, or it is, affecting my whatever, my body or my mind. Right? Then again, just owning. The first one is identifying. You identify with it, then the suffering. You say, my body, you own it, right? There is suffering. And then, so this suffering is mine. Okay, then you look at it as a thing, you objectify it, then it gets worse. There is just suffering. And it comes, it goes. All suffering are impermanent. Okay. So this is not easy to do. So the easiest is, of course, number 5. So notice there I've highlighted number 5. You practice this, it leads to stream winning in this life itself, according to the Anicca Saññā Sutta, right? So there you are. I finished my talk, and here we have this very deep saying from the Sutta Nipata, one of the oldest texts in the Buddhist scripture, SN Sutta Nipata, verse 779, on the benefits of mastering perception. You cross the floods of influxes of all those things that bring suffering, things that make you crave, things that make you have views, things that want you to have all kinds of pleasant states and rebirth, and ignorance. All these are overcome. Here the Buddha says, Saññā pariññā vittareya ogang. Who has understood perception will cross the flood. The flood here, of course, refers to the influxes which I've mentioned. Those things that wash us away in the flood of ignorance and so on. The sage, undefiled by clinging to things, parigahe sumuni no palito, abulha sallo charang appamato, the barb of suffering or the arrow of suffering, drawn up, living heedfully, living mindfully. He longs for neither this world nor the next world. So it just lives in the present, it's happy. Nasing sati lokang imang paranchati. Okay? And so ends the sutta. For the class for today. Now we go on to question time.
Okay, thank you very much, Piya. Could you please stop sharing so we can see everyone?
Stop sharing. Let me see. Yes. Okay.
At the bottom of the screen. Okay, done already. Yes.
Is it done? Yeah, okay, good.
Yes, yes. Okay, I will just read one question to start with the Q&A session.
Yeah, sure.
So one session, this question is from Sister Siu Yong. She asks you, Brother Piya, do we create karma if we dream of quarreling or killing someone? Thank you.
No, dreaming, no. Dreaming, we don't regard that as intentional action. Dreaming may reflect some thoughts that has been troubling us. So it's good to, before you sleep, do some metta, do some loving kindness. You say, may all beings be well and happy. Just say relax when I fall asleep with loving kindness. And as soon as you get up, you can also say, oh, this is wonderful. May all beings be well and happy. So wake up with loving kindness also. Wake up joyfully. Right? Sleep joyfully, wake up joyfully. Only don't jump up and down on the bed, that's all.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else has any question? You can raise your hand and ask the question now.
You only have 20 minutes, no?
Yes.
If anyone doesn't understand any aspect of today's talk, you can ask. This is a good time to ask.
I have a question, sir. Can I ask now?
Who is
Yes.
this?
This is my.
Your name, please?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, can. Is it Mayang, is it?
Mayank, yes.
Okay, yes, ask away, please.
Okay, great. What I want to ask is that how could we work on perception? And like I would let me give an example that let's say there are two kinds of people. Like one person who is able to find small things in daily life which are pretty much enjoyable, and he's like very much engaged throughout the day, and not too much brooding over things or thinking over things because he has enough to see in the daily life that he finds joy in and would do a lot of stuff. On the other hand, another person, probably someone like me, who is like too much, or you could say, too much bogged down or consciousness too much involved with future goals, and therefore like there's this sense of lack that you keep jumping from one thing to another, one big thing to another big thing, whether it's a career idea or a relationship or something
Okay.
like that.
All right, I got it. All right. So, okay, in terms of perception, the good thing is you notice all this, you see? You notice all this. Now, it is easier to help yourself than to help others. Of course, it is possible to help others, but you need a lot of patience and wisdom, okay? But to help yourself, you start with helping yourself. You are your best teacher. So start by asking yourself, why do I think like this? Why do I think like this? Okay. Why do I act like this? Why do I speak like this? Depending on whichever is more dominant. Okay. Just ask that basic question. Maybe not immediately, but at some quiet time later on, as you think quietly, just reflect. Why did I say this? Could I have said it better? Reflect like that. That's one way. Okay. Reflection. Okay. Self-reflection. That's quality control also, because you learn to correct things, right? Because if you don't do this, then you just go on through a habit cycle. You just keep on saying the same thing, which will hurt people and so on. All right. Number two, the Buddha teaches in a very short, simple sutta. It says, if you have tried your best and things don't work out, ask yourself one question: what do I do now? Imagine the Buddha teaching this simple philosophy. What do I do now? Ask yourself that question. Two questions, huh? Why do I think like this, right? And some modification to it. Huh? And what do I do now? What should I do now? Right? For example, right now, what should you do? You should be listening, asking questions, right? So the next time you're in another situation, ask yourself, what should I do now? Of course, what should I do now is the right thing to do, of course, not a bad thing. It should be something positive. Okay, so these are two questions to bear in mind to sort things out for you. It's two simple things. All right. I hope that in this case, to be practical rather than give too much theory. You start thinking about them and not very helpful. Right? Okay.
Right.
Okay. Thank you very much for the question and answer. Next, we have Dr. Dixie. Please
Yes.
turn on your video, please, and unmute yourself.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Brother.
Oh, yes, get you, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the really interesting talk to be able to understand the different perspectives of perception. I have a couple of things to clarify.
Sure.
So the part that you talk about, the 7 latent tendencies, those are kind of correlated with the 10 fetters. Is that right?
Yeah. You can also talk in those 10 fetters. Those are really profound stuff which have to be dealt by themselves. So yes, they're very similar to fetters. In fact, I've done a bit of a survey how simple teachings like maybe 2 ideas, 2 items, they grow into 5, into 7, into 9, into and then you got like, you know, the cycle of 12 links and so on. So these are different ways the Buddha uses depending on the audience. In fact, the more spiritually ready the audience is, the shorter the Buddha need to speak, right? For example, the Buddha spoke only 4 lines to Pahiya, and he got enlightened while standing. You know, it's amazing. He became an arahat, you know. But then remember, in the past life, he was a monk, he was practicing, you know. So right now, this is what we're doing. We're creating this good karma. So the next time you hear another Dhamma talk, you already have the background. You can understand it better. So it builds up like that. Every teacher is teaching us something, or as Ajahn Chah says, that everything is teaching us something. Everything is teaching us. Yeah, so I'm very scared of long lists because it takes a long time to explain, you see. But I do write about them in detail, so they're found in the Sutta Discovery. Okay. Yes, go on, please.
Okay. Thank you
No,
very
no,
much, Priya.
she has another question.
Yes, okay. Go on, please.
Yeah, I just want to also clarify regarding this saññā nibbana.
Oh, yes.
That
Yes.
function of perception, decline, stability, distinction, and penetration.
Yeah.
So, I recall a discussion with another group when we talked about the uprooting of the 3 fetters, the view. So that's vipallasa saññā of the self, and that's when you attain sotapanna with the other 2 fetters. But still, you still do have like a self thing. It's just like the view versus the perception. So there was some confusion about whether there's actually the perception of view is like totally, the self is totally uprooted. But I guess from this saññā nibbana sutta, it seems like there is kind of a deepening realization, or what it was mentioned, the 4th stage of penetration. So I guess.
Let me just add something. You're mentioning about stream winner, is it? The 3 fetters, is it?
Yeah. So
the self. Number 1, right?
That's equal to the uprooting of the.
No, not yet. No, because if you already uprooted the idea of self, you're already an arahat. But arahat has no more idea of the self. The stream winner only doesn't identify with his body. He doesn't see any of the aggregates as that's me. No self-identity view. Sakkaya ditthi. That's number 1.
The vipallasa ditthi, just now you mentioned.
Yeah, that one is a general teaching showing how we mistake what is impermanent as permanent. It is a broad statement. Yeah, how all these wrong views operate, basically. It's a broad statement. It's the how, not the actual level of understanding of a non-self. I don't know whether that makes sense or not. Yeah, you go on asking so that at least I know what is it you're not sure about. So
it's not uprooted yet at the level of stream winner. It's just a view of a self. But then the perception of that self is still there. Is that what?
The idea of self is still there. In other words, it's not totally. For example, there is this idea. The stream winner may say, "Oh, I know more suttas than others," or "I'm happier than others." Or look at all these people; they're suffering and they don't want to study. Why can't they just study? They're so silly and so on. So he still has conceit. Remember, conceit is one of the higher fetters. See? Even a non-returner has some conceit, and a non-returner also has restlessness. I mean, imagine non-returners have these too. Obviously, the stream winners also have them. But why does a non-returner have restlessness? Because a non-returner has compassion. He's compassionate. He says, why can't these beings study the sutras? Then they won't suffer. So he feels that pain, that people not caring for themselves, and because of that they're suffering, and then he can't communicate this healing truth to them, so he feels that pain. Of course, in Mahayana, they make a big deal of this. Whereas in the case of the Arhat is very calm. The Arhat is like a doctor. The doctor sees, okay, all this COVID going on. I mean, he doesn't panic, he doesn't get angry, you see. He says, wow, there's a lot of work to do, and he knows what to do. He doesn't get upset with it or, blame people. See? So the good doctor is, an Arhat is like a good doctor. He's very calm. He looks at the situation, but he's not affected by it. So that's the difference. Okay?
Okay. Is that all? Happy with the answer?
Have a question? I guess you.
Okay, next one.
So if I
I'd like
understand, can I
Yeah.
just sum it up? If I understand you correctly, then that means for the lower factor of non-self view is actually not the same as uprooting of the perception of self. Is that right?
Yeah, it's not uprooting. Uprooting refers to the Arahathood itself. Total uprooting. Total no more wrong view about self. Now there's still lingering idea about self. Of course, even for us, we have the understanding of non-self. We even say, oh yeah, I accept it, although not all of us accept it. But we do have some understanding of non-self. But then when we are put in a difficult situation, we are likely to put ourselves first. So that's the surprising thing. Suddenly you say, oops, why did I do this? Why did I get angry? This person said something and I got angry. Well, that's because of the self, you see. It's because this person is saying something bad to me, you see. You'll be surprised. You look at all of the great teachers you find, the egos are also very big, you see? But they don't know it, and we also don't know to it. So it works well for both sides, you see. But actually, there's a lot of ego there. It's not bad, but it's there, you see. And that's what makes them unhappy and get into situations, you see. So the Arahat, only the Arahat, totally uproots idea of self. Imagine where Sariputta is concerned. There's one very funny story. There's this very proud Brahmin say, oh, so this Buddhists say that these Arahats are humble, huh? They are patient, right? I'm going to test. So he goes behind Sariputta and gives a big slap at the back of Sariputta's back, Sariputta didn't even flinch, He didn't even look back and scold the person. He just went on doing what he's doing. And then this Brahmin was surprised. Yeah, this is interesting. He doesn't get angry at all. So he goes up to Sariputta and says, I gave you a slap, And then Sariputta said, oh, so it's you. He said, so it's you. Did you get upset? Then Sariputta said, why should I get upset? He said, why should I get upset? And then the Brahmin said, wow, okay, now I understand that you are your patient. And then another story, Sariputta was just finished his meditation, and then his head was nicely all clean shaven. It's a full moon day, And this clean shaven heads can be very shiny in the moonlight. So the story goes that two of these yakshas, two beings flying, these are nasty beings. A says to B, A is a nasty one, say, why, look at that mark, it's got a shiny head, and I'm going to slap that head, I'm going to bang that head. And B says, don't do that, you know who that is, it's a holy monk, why you want to do that? They say, hey, because he's a monk, so I want to hit his head and see how he reacts. So this bad yaksha goes down and slaps, wow, really a hard slap on Sariputta's head. Again, Sariputta did not flinch, he just calm. And of course, this poor yaksha suffered very bad karma, So here, your Sariputta is not only wise, but he's also very patient, very calm, very humble. No self. That's the Arahat, see?
Okay, thank you very much. Can we move on to another question now?
Sure.
Okay, Brother Patrick, do you have a microphone or not? Can you unmute yourself, please?
Okay. Piya Tan,
Yeah, sure.
these two parts of the question
Mm.
is thinking and action that create karma
Yes.
is thought as a noun, a mental factor.
You mean does it create karma also? Mental factor. Yeah, of course, it's a mental factor, but is there any further question to that were thoughts? Okay, simple answer is there are three doors of karma, okay? Body, speech, and mind. Karma can arise through body. That means the first three precepts are broken through body, right? And the speech, the fourth precept, plus all the other wrong speeches. And then through thinking also, we create mental karma. Of course, thinking alone technically does not count as breaking precepts. But the problem with thinking is that if you go on thinking, you will one day break the precepts. So we have to also clear the mind of mental karma. So you got mental karma, speech karma, and body karma. Any action that has intention. Here is the rub, okay? A lot of people think, oh, I got no intention. Actually, even when you are not conscious of your action, there is karma. Take, for example, a butcher. The butcher is so used to slaughtering animals and selling the meat. After a while, he doesn't even think of the killing. It's so automatic, you know. And then he will even say, oh, you know, I'm not killing any being, you know, I'm not hitting anyone, you know. In fact, I'm supporting my family. But the karma is still there because you cannot kill without hatred. You cannot kill without delusion. Maybe, you know, maybe you think you have no hatred, but the delusion is there. So that's why karma is better understood as a habit. When you get angry once, you get angry again, right? When you lie once, you lie again. That's the danger that we don't want this cycle to pick up. So we got to nip the habit in the bud, right? So karma is habit forming in that sense, like a drug. So we have to understand karma right now. Let me not do this. So the 5 precepts remind us of 5 basic things of how to prevent ourselves from creating bad karma. Hope that answers your question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much, Piya. Anyone else? Oh, Brother Long has a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, please unmute yourself.
I kind of forget what I guess then like you were talking about habits, right? So now, so I guess today we're talking about perception. So we just have to keep practicing, remind ourselves to see things. Like for instance, if some people don't wear masks, we just have to tell ourselves like they are not doing it intentionally. It's just because they are conditioned to be that way.
Well, even if they're doing it intentionally, we must say that they're conditioned in that way, see?
Okay.
Right? I mean, if they really know better, they wouldn't, you see? If they can see the future, what will happen, they won't, see, but they don't have those powers.
Yeah.
It's quite tricky.
Because I'm working or not working. I started a self-help group, and then with a couple of those African American folks. So I always have to tell, I guess I don't like to label people as racist. I just say like they're ignorant.
Yeah.
They are conditioned to be that way. But people do experience like the deep hatred from the other group of people.
Yes.
So can I say that people are, maybe they are racist, or we just have to say like
all such terms are provisional. Although if you remember them, that this moment you are racist, but you are not. Remember E-prime language? So you rephrase it, you see? Instead of saying you are racist, you say, when you say this, there are racist overtones, you see? That's one way. Or this particular act you are doing may be interpreted as racist. So then it is not so not a blanket term. It's not, you're not blaming everyone because of one action, you're condemning the whole person. The act is wrong, not the person, in a manner of speaking. Of course, when I say person here, I'm putting myself a bit of difficulty also. It's the action that is that we decide, not the good or bad, see?
Okay, so it's kind of like a child. If the child do something wrong, say, "Oh, that child is a bad child." Say, "Oh, he acted stupid." Okay.
Yeah, a child is a child, you see? I mean, we say, oh, it's just a child, you know, you would say that, you know, that's a child, it's playful, that it doesn't see cause and effect, you know, things like that. That's compassion. Compassion means showing kindness even where you don't have to, even when the person does not deserve it, but you show that kindness.
Okay, so we just have to keep reminding ourselves to change our perception, even though we know they are wrong, but we have to train our mind so that we don't have that habit.
Not only that, by being positive, people look at you and then wonder, say, how come you are so calm, you know, when we are so flustered up, you see? Then they wonder, they see you feel so good. They're not happy. They're not happy, you see. So, and they don't want to tell you they're not happy. But when you show them that you are happy, then they discover they have something that they don't have something that good that you have. And then they want that. And that's when you help them, you teach them. You so why don't you join our group? You know, I mean, and it is something I took many years to learn myself, you know, and they don't feel threatened, they feel welcome. And the more people you have like that, wow, the better, you know, then you have a fantastic group. And I tell you, US is a difficult place to work. And it's a good thing you're doing all this, you know, and then you have a network of this kind of people. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Wonderful. So
looks like, we have to end our session already.
Okay. Right. So now we come to this time, this happy moment where, you know, we have completed this wonderful act of gathering together, have sacrificed our time, put aside a lot of things to just be here with old friends from many lives before, I'm sure. We have kept the precepts, we have recited the precepts, we have done some meditation, we have listened to the suttas, right? So these are all wonderful things, they are very good things. Remember this. We are now calling the earth to witness, to recall a very famous episode in the Buddha's life when he was challenged by Mara, the evil one, that he has no right to sit under the Bodhi tree. No one witnessed all these good deeds in the past. Here we are. We are witness to each other, all the good deeds we have done. And this karma is our ground. This karma is what will keep us going happily. So with that in mind, we close by bowing down 3 times to the Buddha, our teacher, the Dhamma, the teaching, and the Sangha, the noble ones who are exemplars of the teaching. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi. Bow down. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Bow down. Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. Bow down. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.